My name is Laura Crawford, so I'll be your facilitator. I've been with PPM Works for a few years now. And one of the reasons why I have this short slide up here, I have a couple of slides for you to see. I call them shameless plugs because what would a webinar be without a little shameless plug on what we are and what we're about? So let's just talk about PPM Works for just a moment. We are a Microsoft Gold certified partner. That's a really big deal. It's not an easy accomplishment to attain. We actually have, Microsoft actually reaches out to our customers and our clients and says, hey, you know, are they everything that they say they are? What do you think of them? And of course, based on that feedback, we still maintain that gold certification. And we also have to have a lot of certified individuals on our team. So I'm one of many on a team. Each of us has taken all of those project certification and configuration exams. So we all have, we are all certified in the tool. I've been certified back since 2007, 10, 13, and 16. So I've taken all of those exams as well as others on my team as well. So competent hands if you select us and choose us. The other thing is too that we actually drink from the well. What I mean by that is I have projects. I create projects in Project Professional connected to Project Online. I publish those projects. I build my team. I monitor and control those projects. I run reports. I fill out a timesheet every Friday. So we actually use the tool every single day in our business. And that's really important because of that, we bring that wealth of knowledge to our clients. So if we come out to your site and you ask me or tell me that you want to do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to ask you some questions like, well, why do you want to do that? What are you hoping to achieve? And then we're going to get into, well, we do the same thing, and this is what really works for us. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to help you. After today, you can always email us at info@ppmworks.com. We'll answer any additional questions. I know there's going to be a bunch of information that I'm throwing at you in today's session. So you might not think of a question, but you might be getting in the tool later on and something might trip you up and you'll say, hey, I remember Laura talking about that, but I don't really remember what she said to do. No worries, just shoot us an email at info@ppmworks.com. That is also how you request the recording of today's webinar as well. So please feel free to reach out to us. But again, I'd like to welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you're dialing in from. Hopefully this is one of many webinars that you'll be attending. So I just wanted to go through and give you a brief overview of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk about the scheduling formula. We're going to talk about task types. That is an important part of that scheduling formula in Microsoft Projects. Then we're also going to talk about units. All right, we'll talk about maximum units, assignment units, and peak units. And then at the very end, I'm also going to give you a demo in the tool and give you some tips on how you can practice or further explore task types on your own, give you some ideas on what you could do afterwards. And then we'll save the last 10 minutes or so for a question and answer. So at that point, and again, remember, you can jump in to that chat window and email me at any time. If I see it while I'm presenting, I'll take a moment to answer your questions. If not, we'll take the time at the end to address your questions. All right, and also feel free to link in with me. I'm always willing to meet new people, expand my contact list, so feel free to do that as well. All right. Okay, so our session, our learning objectives, we're going to take you through scheduling engine of Microsoft Projects. So we're going to have you become more familiar, all right, and help you decide or learn how to select the correct or appropriate task type. All right, so we're going to improve your understanding of task types. We're going to equip you to get started today and also make the most of your time. All right, this webinar is scheduled typically during lunchtime so that you don't have to take too much time away from your busy day job to join us. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get in here. So some of you may be giggling at the slide. Some of you might not understand just yet, but if you're using Microsoft Project, you probably have felt the struggle, right? The struggle is real, all right? This poor gentleman looks like he's about to smash his laptop because if you've ever been in Microsoft Project, and you start editing either your work, your duration, or you're adding resources to a task, something starts recalculating in project, all right? And sometimes many beginner users or even advanced users don't really understand why that's happening or what's going on. So it can be a little bit frustrating, to say the least. So today's session is all about that. We're going to get in here and we're going to talk about, why do my dates change unexpectedly? Why, when I assign resources, is my work recalculating and going out of control? All right, so teaching you about those task types so that you understand what's happening in the background. All right, so let's talk about the scheduling formula. That's why you joined today. So the scheduling formula, here it is. Work is equal to duration times units. We'll explain what peak is in just a moment, but work is equal to duration times units. This is the driving force behind task calculations, all right? So if you change one of these variables, if you edit your duration, if you edit work, if you add resources to a task, or you remove resources from a task, one of these variables has to recalculate. It has to. All right, so what we're going to talk about is how you can lock down these variables so that you can anticipate or predict what will change next. All right, so that is your scheduling formula. Again, it's work is equal to duration times units. So let's talk for a minute about what work duration and units even are. All right, work, it's the person hours that a task requires. All right, so it's the actual effort. How much time am I going to be spending in hours on this task? Your duration is different from that. Your duration is the total span of working time for a task. All right, so if I give something a 2-week duration, that's going to calculate as 10 working days. All right, so it's not going to take into account Saturday or Sunday. It's looking at the total span of working time for a task. And units is the percentage or number that represents the assigned resources allocation to a task. So how am I assigning resources to tasks in my project? That's what units is looking at. Is it 2 people? Is it 3 people? Is it 1 person at 50% or half time? All right, so work, duration, and units. These are the 3 variables in that scheduling engine. All right, so let's talk about task types. You have 3 task types. Those 3 variables, units, work, and duration, you have the ability to select which of those variables you want to lock down. The default is fixed units. All right, the default for Microsoft Project is fixed units. So if you were to open up Microsoft Project on your machine right now, you would see that all your tasks are defaulting to the fixed units task type. All right, and what that means, again, is you're locking the resource allocation. So the units, or how someone is allocated to work on that task, is what is being fixed. So any changes to the amount of work or duration will not impact the units. Fixed work, work again is your effort. So that's the hours that you're spending working on a task. You're locking the work. So any changes to duration or units is not going to impact your work. And then fixed duration, okay, by now you're catching on, I'm sure, and you're saying, okay, I get it. Now my duration is fixed, so any changes to work or units is not going to impact my duration. The only thing I want to point out in here is, don't select fixed duration because you want this task to start on a specific date and end on a specific date. Duration isn't date-driven. Duration is the time between the start and end of a task. If the task is supposed to start today and it doesn't start until a week from today, the duration remains unchanged, but the start date does not. So just keep that in mind. And then there's also this extra little variable called effort-driven. Effort-driven, again, effort is equal to work. This only comes into play when you're either adding or removing resources from a task. This gives you the ability to lock down a second variable. So if we're using the fixed units default task type and we're marking a task as effort-driven, we're locking 2 variables down. We're locking the units down and we're locking the work down, which means the only thing that's going to be impacted by any edits to either work or units is the duration. So it's giving you that ability to lock that third part of that, or second part of that equation down. So then only one variable is recalculating at any given time. And I'm going to take you through some scenarios in just a bit in project and show you how you can practice this on your own. All right, but let's go ahead and take a look at some examples here. All right, so if we're looking at fixed units, again, we're saying that the units is what's locked. So if I change my duration, my work has to recalculate. So in this scenario example, we have 2 days, we have 2 people or 2 units working on this particular task, which relates to 4 person days. And what we mean by person days is if we have 2 people working on something heads down for 2 days, we should expect about 32 hours of effort from those individuals. But if we take the duration from 2 days down to 1 day, and we still have 2 people working on it, the effort's going to have to recalculate from 32 hours down to 16 hours. All right, so again, we're locking the units down, so if we edit the duration, the work is recalculating. And if we're looking at fixed duration, that means we're locking down the duration again. So the 2 days is going to be locked. So if we make a change in the units, if we take one resource away from this task, that doesn't mean that it's going to take them twice as long to complete it. It just means that they're not going to be able to do as much work because the duration remains the same. All right, so the work recalculates on that. And fixed work again is your effort. So your duration, again, if we're going to change the units, if we're going to take a resource away from this particular task, then the duration is going to have to recalculate. The work remains the same. All right, so that 32 hours is unchanged. So instead of them being able to complete that same amount of work in 2 days, now they're going to need 4 days to be able to complete that work. All right, so this is a nice little handy cheat sheet, if you will. When I go out on site and I do some training for some of our clients, I give them the training materials and I say, hey, if you never open this up ever again for project management, which I doubt if that's the case, but if you do one thing, grab this one page and print it. Print it, laminate it, whatever you have to do, and stick it up in your cubicle. Because it's very, very helpful because the scenarios that I just gave you are pretty straightforward and pretty easy, right? So if we're locking duration, I touch the work, the units have to recalculate. But what happens if I change the duration, the one part of the variable that is locked down? How do I anticipate whether it is the units or the work that will recalculate? That's the tricky part when you start editing the one part of the variable that is locked. And this is a helpful little cheat sheet, if you will, that'll tell you, well, if it is a fixed duration task type and a revised duration, my work will be recalculated. All right, so this is a very helpful little slide that you can reference at any point. All right, but now let's talk about units. All right, we were looking at units, and there was peak units thrown in one of those slides, and some of you might be saying, what on earth is peak units? I've never even heard of that. All right, so there are 3 fields for units. There's maximum units, assignment units, and peak units. 3 different types. Your maximum units is how much of a resource's time is available for projects, so it's at the project level. So am I assigned to this project at 100%? It also is typically determined in the enterprise resource pool. So if you're on this webinar and you're using Project Online or you're using Project Server, there's an administrator that's determining how much of that resource's time is available for projects at the enterprise level. So if they leave it as is at 100%, that means everybody is assigned to your projects at 100%. Your assignment units is different. Your assignment units refers to the assignment, the task assignment. As a project manager, I might have someone on my team that's been dedicated at 100%, but I know they're really not going to be spending 100% of their time on my project, so I can assign them at 25% or 50% to my tasks and my project plan to more reflect reality. All right, but your assignment units will always look at how much of a resource's time is initially assigned to the task. So if I assign someone to a task at 100%, it's going to stay at 100%. And what I mean by that is, let's say I give somebody 2 days to do a task, and it's 16 hours of effort on that task, and they're assigned at 100%, but then I go ahead and change the duration down to 1 day. Well, if they still have 16 hours of work to do in 1 day, they're no longer assigned at 100%. They're really assigned at 200%. But the assignment units will stay at 100% because that's how I originally assigned that person. Your peak units, however, will show you how a person is currently assigned to a task. So I would see in a peak units field that that person is 200%, no longer 100%. And I'll show you how you can insert these into views so that you can really clearly see that in Microsoft Project. But I'm just going to go through another example in just a moment, and then we'll jump into the tool in just a quick moment. All right, so understanding units. Here's an example. I have Kieran, he's on my team, he's a real person, and he's available 8 hours a day. His maximum units is set to 100%. So he's available to work on projects for 8 hours a day. So if I give him 8 hours of work, he's going to be able to complete that in 1 day. Whereas Jacques, who's also a real person, Jacques, his maximum units are 50% because he's doing a lot of other things. He's not just fully dedicated to project work. So if I assign him the same amount of work, but he's 50%, he's going to need more days to complete it. All right, so maximum units, again, that's managed at the enterprise resource pool level. So you're not going to be able to get in there and necessarily change that. All right, but also note that when you're looking at task types or you're looking at getting in there and determining whether you want it to be fixed units, fixed duration, or fixed work, let me back up for just a moment. Let me just go back a few slides here. And let's go back here to our task types here. All right, so we can set this at the project level, and we could also set it individually for individual tasks. All right, so the default task type for all projects is fixed units. So that means when you add tasks to your project, they are going to have the default task type of fixed units. But as a project manager, I can change that for my entire project, or I can change it for just individual tasks. So some of you might be saying, okay, well, which one do I use, and how do I know which one to use? And the answer is really that really depends. It depends on your organization. All right, now I'm a consultant. I'm going to tell you, we're fixed work because what we do is we have a needs call with someone, we determine what they need for their project implementation, we take that information and we actually create a project plan from that. And that project plan is taken, a snapshot of that is taken, and it's put into a statement of work. And once that statement of work goes back and forth and we come to an agreement with both parties, it's signed. So as a consultant, that means that I'm locked in to whatever work estimate I've put in that particular project plan. So if I tell you I'm going to develop a workflow and it's going to take me 8 hours, but then I get in there and realize I'm having some trouble with some things and it's taking me longer than 8 hours, I'm not going to be billing my client more than 8 hours. That's on me. All right, so my projects are fixed work projects. Fixed duration projects, if you have maybe an event that you're planning, or a training, a training project where you're rolling out a whole big training program to everyone, where it's going to take 4 days to do this training class, and no matter how many instructors we have on it or the number of students, the duration is going to stay the same. That might be an example of when you'd use fixed duration. Or many of you are probably just using the fixed units because you may not have even been aware that these options existed for you or that they're out there. All right, so I'm also going to give you a little bit of a scenario that I'll also help you remember. All right, I'm giggling because you'll know in a moment. There's the Pope, a policeman, and a painter. And no, they don't all walk into a bar. So hopefully, if you were dozing off, I now have your attention. But again, it's the Pope, a policeman, and a painter. And I've chosen these 3 specific people because let's start with the Pope. Okay, so the Pope, there's only one in the world, right? And there may only be one type of person like that at your organization, a developer, let's say. You need someone that can develop this code, and you only have one developer, all right? That would be an example of a fixed unit's task type. When to use fixed units, either for the task that that individual is working on, or again, for the entire project. The policeman. The policeman is going to work the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, all right? And let's say the parade's going to take 4 hours to complete. All right, so the mayor of New York decides to give him a few extra officers to work that beat to help him with security. All right, so he's got a few extra police officers working with him. Now, does that impact the parade route or the timing of the parade? No, right? If the parade is going to take 4 hours, whether there's 10 police officers on that corner or whether there's one. That's an example of a fixed duration type. The last scenario is the painter, all right? The painter comes in to your company and he's going to paint 2 floors in your building, all right? And he says, yes, we're going to go ahead and it'll take us 2 weeks to paint every, corner of each of these 2 floors. And great, you sign the contract, the painter's all ready to go, and you find out that your CEO is flying in from Spain or somewhere, all right? And now you have to call the painter and you say, oh my goodness, I know I told you you had 2 weeks. I'm so sorry. We need this done in 1 week. Can you still do the job? Well, the painter, of course, is going to say yes. He's not going to say, well, I'm only going to paint the 1 floor then. He wants his money, right? He's going to get paid for the total job. He doesn't want to cut that in half. So the painter is going to go ahead and hire another paint crew and get the work done in 1 week instead of 2, all right? So that's an example of fixed work, all right? So again, if you remember anything, think of the Pope, the policeman, and the painter, and that might help you or drive you to understand when to use which. All right, so now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to open up Project. All right, so I have Microsoft Projects open. I'll give it a moment in case there's some latency. So you should be able to see my project plan open here. So I wanted to show you in the actual tool what we've been going through and covering here. All right, so this is actually a resource sheet view. I can see that from over here. And I've added, this is my sandbox environment. So if we have anything in here or anything going on, I'm not going to worry about it. Oh, I think project is going to reboot for me. So anything that's in here, again, is connected to my sandbox environment. So we'll wait for that to reopen. It should relaunch there. It's been open nicely in the background all this time. It never fails. Come on, project, you can do it. All right. All right, let's see if I can get this back up and running, because I really do want to demonstrate this in the tool. While I'm waiting for project to come back to life here for me, let's see. I'm going to exit out of my slide deck here for a moment, I think. Let's see. Let's try that. Let's see if we can really wake up project in the background here. Oh, geez, I've got a million things open. Oh, and there's my script to run a code. Come on, project. You can do it. All right, while we're waiting for that to come back, not a big deal. We'll go through the slides again. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on with my project there. All right, so let me move on to our units here. All right, so we were talking about examples of units here. All right, so what I want to point out again is remember that assignment units is how you initially assign a resource to a task in your project. All right, and it'll never be recalculated by project unless you go in and adjust it. So if I assign someone at 100% and then I manually adjust it down to 50%, then it'll go from 100 to 50%. All right, but your peak units are really going to show you how a resource is currently assigned to tasks in your project. So having said that, let me see if I can wake up project real quick. Come over here. I'm going to close it. Or use my task. manager. Sorry, I'm going to force it closed, I believe. It should start up in just a moment. Sorry about that, folks. All right. Okay, so let's try this again. All right, so it's launching. Let me get into my sandbox environment one more time. Oh, and somebody is asking if peak units is a new feature. It actually was introduced in 2010, and it is not really a new feature. It was just brought up so that you could see or understand how someone is really truly assigned to a task. So in other words, if they're assigned more than 8 hours a day, they're red, but otherwise, to help you understand how resources are truly assigned in your project plan. So let me just open up this. I'm going to have to start all over. That kind of stinks, but that's okay. We can do this pretty quick. So what I was trying to show you in my other view was the units that you saw on the resource sheet, that's coming from my enterprise resource pool. All right, so that's set in the enterprise resource pool. Now, one of the questions was, how do I adjust the units in my blank project, or change the task type, I should say. So if I go to my File tab back in my Backstage and I go to my Options here, it's located on your Schedule tab. So again, File, you're in the Backstage, go to Options at the very bottom, and then if you navigate to Schedule, you'll see here, this is your default task type. And this is where you could also say, hey, I want to change this, or you know what, I don't mind fixed units, but I do want to lock in effort as well, or work. So I could also select that checkbox here. Now, the trick to this is, right now, the scheduling options, if I change them here, will only apply to the project that I have open now. But if you wanted to say, hey, all of our projects are fixed work, that's a brilliant idea. Let's just change this across the board for every time I open project up, then I recommend you select all new projects. All right, all new projects, then every time I open up Project Pro, it will remember my preferences, and it will always, all my projects will be fixed work going forward. That's all new ones, not my existing projects, only those new ones that I create. All right, so I would have to change it manually for other projects if I needed to. But this is where you change it for the project level. I'm not going to do that, though. Let's just cancel out of here. All right, but what I am going to do is I'm going to go to a different view. I'm going to go to a task usage view, because I think you get the big picture when I go to this task usage view. And what I'm going to insert in here is that field that I was referencing, peak. I'm going to go ahead and insert my column. Sorry, I had done this all in advance, but when project decided to restart at showtime, I have to redo it, so sorry about that. But I went ahead, inserted peak in here so that I could see that. This is a task usage view. I'm also going to take one extra step, only because I think this makes it look a little neater. I'm going to start my project from last Monday so that we can see real clear on here. All right, I just want to be able to see how hours are being scheduled accordingly. All right, so I'll probably just throw in some local resources to make it quick and easy. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just go ahead and throw in a couple of resources here. Let me go ahead and build my team. Come on. Let's see. And drag this over just in case I have something I'm hiding over here. All right, I'm going to add a few people. I'm going to add a couple of people from my team, including myself. There we go. Select OK. All right, so I've added some resources on my other monitor. If I go to my resource sheet view, you'll see that. These are not real. This is Sandbox. I go in here and change rates, and I change maximum units all the time. So don't be looking at this and be alarmed that I'm sharing that with you. This is my playland, and I am always in here changing things on the fly. All right, so what you're seeing here is not real data. Okay, so I have 3 people, Anthony, myself, and Scott, that I've gone ahead and added to my project plan. The maximum units that I'm seeing in here, oh, project just restarted again. Awesome. All right, we're going to try one more time, third time's a try. That comes from the Enterprise Resource Pool. So Enterprise Resource Pool will dictate what maximum units you see there. As a project manager, when I assign resources to tasks in my project plan, I have the ability of adjusting that. All right, so I can go in and adjust that as needed. Let's see if this is, there we go. Drag it back over again. All righty. So nothing like a little technical difficulty to keep us hanging in there. I'm going to insert peak yet again. I am not bothering with my enterprise resources. We're just going to keep it simple. Let me make this nice and big so everyone can see it. All right, so minute task usage view. I'm not even going to mess with the date time starting on Monday like I did. But what I am going to do is I'm going to get rid of my timeline, and I'm going to put this in a details view. I want the split screen down here because I want to be able to see my task type. I want to be able to see my units, my work for each resource that I assign to a task. All right, so I am going to do this. And what I'm going to do is I am going to create tasks, and this only works if you are auto-scheduled. So if you are not auto-scheduled, it will not work. All right, the scheduling engine only works when it's set to auto-scheduling. Manually scheduling means that you are telling project how to schedule tasks. It's not doing it for you. All right, so let me go ahead and type in fixed duration. And I'm going to do fixed work. And I'm skipping spaces, which is a no-no if you're using Project Server. I'm just doing this just so we can see this nice and clear. So fixed duration, you'll see here, it's fixed units because we just said that the default task type is units. So I'm going to come in here and change that. All right, I'm going to come down here to fixed work. And I'm going to change this one to fixed work as well. Click OK. All right, so now we're cooking with gas. At least I hope so, right? We'll see if project cooperates for me. Units, duration, and work. Sometimes when it's acting up, I have to reboot, but obviously that's not an option right now. So we're just going to have to do the best we can. All right, so fixed units up here. I'm going to go ahead and select this. I'm going to go ahead and just type in a resource name. All right, I'm going to pick Sam. I don't know, I like that name. We're going to go ahead and say Sam. It's here. Going to keep it nice and simple. I'm going to say, oops, not 0%, but how about 100%? We'll bring in Sam at 100% over 2 days. All right, so Sam is working over the course of 2 days. He has 16 hours of work. We can see that here, Thursday and Friday. He has 8 hours on each day here. All right, so again, this is fixed units, right? Fixed units tasks, we've all got that, we understand that. So what I'm saying is I'm locking the units here. So if I change the duration from 1 day, or 2 days, excuse me, down to 1 day, what is going to recalculate? Is it my work or is it my units? Well, I'll give you a hint. This is locked, right? So it's going to have to be work. All right, so there you go. All right, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Here's where a lot of folks get into trouble, though. I'm going to go ahead and add Katie onto this. I'm going to say Katie is also 100% dedicated because maybe we're in a time crunch and we need to get this finished by noon. So I really want I want Katie to help Sam out. I want them to get this task done sooner. Well, watch what happens when I add Katie. We're locking the units, so you might be doing this to shorten your duration in your project, but if I select OK, that is not the assumption that project makes. Project makes the assumption that each of these resources needed 8 hours of work effort to complete that task. And what you'll see is if you don't have work in a particular view, such as a Gantt view, its duration, start and finish, and you're throwing resources on a task, what you might not be seeing is that your work is recalculating in the background. So let's say you have like even something as simple as a meeting that's only going to take a couple of hours, and yet you're throwing all these resources because you want them to attend the meeting and they will be there. Well, what it's doing is it's taking that 2-hour meeting and adding additional effort for every resource that you add to it. All right, so that is the fixed units task type. Now, if I needed to add another resource onto this, without recalculating my work, what I could do is elect to have this effort driven. All right, so if I select effort driven, here I'm locking both the units and the effort here. So now, if I go ahead and type in another resource here and add them at 100%, what will happen is this time it'll take the total work, 16 hours, and it recalculates it. It divides it up between the 3 people. All right, so effort locks the work in addition to the task type, but it only comes into play when you start removing or adding resources to a task. All right, so fixed units, again, we're saying that the units is locked, so if I edit the work, my duration recalculates. If I edit duration, my work recalculates. And if I add resources to a task, my work will recalculate. All right, let's take a look at fixed duration. Let's go ahead and select one of these guys. Let's start with Sam. Let me say this is 2 days again to keep it relatively simple and consistent. And we'll say 16 hours of work. Let's see. Okay, so we have Sam on this fixed duration task. So again, if I come in here and I adjust his work from 16 hours down to 8, let's say I go ahead and select 8, and I click on OK, that's not going to recalculate the duration because I've locked that. All right, what it does do is it recalculates the units, but look how this did not change. All right, so that's why I inserted this peak column in here. All right, but we can see that he is not, in fact, assigned at 100%. It's only 4 hours a day. 8 hours would represent 100%. So why didn't this change here? Because remember when we were talking about units, it always shows you, this is assignment units here, this always shows you how Sam was originally assigned to the task. I assigned him at 100% to that task. So this will stay at 100%. But my peak units will always display whether or not, how he truly is assigned. So if I was to come in here and say, let's say 24 hours, let's up this, and select OK, again, my units does not change here, but my peak units does change. And I can see that he is not currently assigned at 100%. He is assigned at 150% instead. All right, so your peak units, all right, and that's why I'm showing you this in a task usage view. So you get the big picture so that you can see over here how the work is being assigned. You can see your peak units over here, and you can see your assignment units, your work, and your task type here. All right, okay. So in a fixed duration task, of course, if we change units or we change work or we change units, we know our work is going to recalculate and vice versa. We've locked our duration. But what happens if I change the one thing that is fixed? This is when it gets a little bit more difficult to predict. Let me go ahead and select OK. And we can see here that he's scheduled to work at 12 hours a day, 150%. All right, so his units remain the same. He's still at 150%, but he doesn't have that second 12 hours, so the work recalculated on that. The units remain the same. The duration was what we adjusted, and the work recalculated. So he no longer has the 24 hours. He just has 12 hours on one day. Okay, so what happens if we add a second person to help Sam out here? If we add Katie to this task at 100% and we click on OK, you'll see here that it just goes ahead and assigns Katie an additional 8 hours of work for that particular day, right? We didn't alleviate the overage for Sam by adding another resource onto this. Now, if I wanted to, I could make this effort-driven as well, and then I could go ahead and add Daniel to this task at 100%. And in this case, it takes the work and it divides it up, all right? So it takes the total work that was previously scheduled for Katie and Sam, and it divides it between the 3 resources. Now, let me scroll down just a little bit. And now we'll take a look at fixed work. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll do 2 days duration. We'll say annual this time. We'll say 16 hours. We'll select OK. And let's keep this to 2 days there. Okay, so we've got Daniel working 16 hours over the course of 2 days. So for fixed work, we're locking in the work, all right? So if we adjust the duration from 2 days down to 1, we can predict that our units will recalculate. But remember, we're not going to see that here. We're going to see it up here, okay? So if we go ahead and click OK, he's now at a peak units of 200%, all right? And we can see that he's scheduled to work 16 hours in 1 day. And we think, okay, Daniel's going to quit. He's heading out the door. He's got his bag packed. He's ready to go. So I'm going to assign Katie to help him, because this is fixed work. When I select OK, it's going to take the 16 hours of work and recalculate it. All right, so it's going to try and alleviate some of that burden that was initially on Daniel there. All right, so you have fixed work, fixed duration, and fixed units. Not an easy concept to understand or master. I get tripped up by it too, quite a bit. So actually, let me also show you something else that might be helpful. I'm in a split view screen so that we could see the big picture, but if I just type in new task here, and I change it to make sure it is auto-scheduled. Here, let me go down here. Let's make this a 2-day task here. And now if I go ahead and add, I'm going to do it up here because I want to, let me add a resource up here. So I'm in a task usage view, so let's see if it'll let me do this here. So I'm going to add Daniel to this task and select OK. All right, now if I add another resource to this task, whoops, sorry about that. If I go ahead and adjust Daniel's work up here in the table, instead of the split screen where I was, you're going to see something called a smart tag, this little green triangle up here in the left-hand corner. All right, and if I click on this drop-down here, and this will always appear if you're editing resources in a table. If you're using the split screen, it does not come into play down here because you see the work, you see the units, you see the task type, but what it's asking you up here is you decrease the amount of work for this resource. Do you want to decrease the duration but keep the hours the resources work per day or units the same? Or do you want to decrease the hours the resources work per day, which is the units, and keep the same duration? So if you've been merely adding or in a Gantt chart view, in other words, I'm in a task usage view, but you were using your resource drop-down or maybe your assign resources box and you were assigning resources to tasks, you may not have noticed these green triangles popping up. But what this is your task types here, folks. This is asking you, hey, I know you changed one part of that variable, but this is what I'm thinking you want to do. This is project assumption. If it's correct, you leave it as is. If it's not, you select the other radio button here. So these are called smart tags, and they only come into play when you're adjusting resources. So if I have a resource, either I'm adding resources or taking them away, or I'm adjusting the work here, it's going to ask me which part of the variable do you want to recalculate. So pay attention to those. So if you're not, if you're normally editing in a Gantt chart view, and you're adding resources from that view, you may not have realized that these little green triangles will be here. And this will stay here until I make my next edit. So if I add additional tasks and I add additional resources, this will go away, and then the new smart tag will appear for me. So it's there just to prompt you to say, hey, we just want to make sure we're on the same page, is this what you want me to do? Because this is what I'm doing. All right, so it's a good way for you to check and make sure that it is in fact the edit that you are hoping for. But again, if you're using this detailed split view, you can see all that information down here. All right, so pretty helpful view to play around with this, these scenarios to help you understand or become better at editing and predicting which part of that scheduling engine is going to adjust. So again, I'm in a task usage view. I put it in a split view by selecting details. I deselected timeline. And I added peak, just so that we could see how the resources are being assigned. That's why I like using the usage view here, so we can see the hours per day. All right, so I've been talking now for about 50 minutes, so I do want to take a pause. I do have a couple of questions in the chat window that I've gone ahead and answered so far. So you can change the task type here in the split view. If you're not using a split view, your task information dialog box will also give you the ability to, here, let me go to a Gantt chart view. So if I wanted to open up my task information dialog box, I could also go to General. Oh, let's see, is it Advanced? Yep, here we are, Task Type. I can set the task type at the individual task level from the task information dialog box. I could use my detailed split screen, Also, this is a field. So if you're in a Gantt chart view and you prefer to just not be in a usage view, I can insert, and this is a prompt because I am using project server. Type right here is a field. You can go ahead and insert that there. Effort is also a field that you can insert. All right, so type you can insert into any view, and effort driven. And if I wanted to change it for my entire project, I could do that, and I could fill down for all tasks. All right, so I can grab that tiny little corner here and fill down as I need to. All right, so you can change it here. If I wanted to change it for all new projects going forward, that's back here in the options. It's on the schedule tab. All right, so the units are here, and also the effort-driven checkbox. And again, this will only change it for the current project that I'm in. So if I wanted to, I would need to select all new projects. Now, there is a question about templates. So if I go ahead and make a personal selection or a preference for all new projects, this is my task type, I do believe that my personal preferences will even override a template. But if you want to make the experience consistent for users so that they don't have to go in and change this for their own individual projects, so if you had this aha moment on this webinar and said, you know what, we are fixed work, let's go ahead and change all our project plans to fixed work, yes, I would create a template, I would select the task type for that particular template, I would save it as a template, and then when new projects are created using that template, the task will automatically have the fixed work task type. All right, so that's the best way to do that. You can set it, you can try and set it in the Enterprise Global, but your personal preferences will override the Enterprise Global. Enterprise Global is something that administrators can change. It's the global template for all users that are using Project Professional. I could change views, I can modify tables, etc., so that when all my project managers open up Microsoft Project, they would see my custom view with my custom tables and my custom filters. So you can do it. You can modify the global template so that your user experience is consistent, especially if you're constantly adding in these fields to views. You can certainly do that at the global level. But the best practice for setting the task type would be to set it in the template so that when users go ahead and open up the template, the task type that you have chosen for your organization is there. Okay, so those are good questions. any other questions? Let me scroll up a little bit, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, don't see any other questions in here. All right, so again, you can change this for the entire project, or you could change it for at the task level like I've done here. All right, so it's not all or nothing. So maybe you have projects that are fixed units, and then you have a certain phase of your project where you want to make that a fixed duration task type. You can get in there and change that. One thing that you'll see, though, that I'll just give you, and this question has come up from time to time. I'm just going to type in summary task. I need to make this, again, auto-scheduled. And let me just do that. And then let me type in a subtask. And the reason I'm showing you this is, by default, your summary task will always be fixed duration. So see how that changed to fixed duration? I just want to point that out. So if you do change your task type for your projects, or if you're in there because you've inserted your type field just to see that, you will take note that your summary tasks are always fixed duration, and that's because the summary duration is rolling up from your subtask. So it's calculating the duration based upon the subtask that you're entering in there. So this will be the one thing that you cannot change. So you'll see I'm clicking on this, you might not be able to see that, but whoop, it will not let me change that. All right, so you won't be able to change your task type for summary tasks if it is auto-scheduled. And of course, if I change this to be manually scheduling, that's a moot point for this, because then you're telling project to turn off that scheduling engine. It won't even look at that equation. You will be manually entering start, finish dates, your work, and your duration. All right, so I'm seeing another one. Hold on. Let me read through this question here. All right, so there is a question about PDUs in here, professional development units. We are registered education providers for PMI, so go ahead and email us after the webinar at info@ppmworks.com, and we would be happy to try and get that code out for you so that you can claim that information to get your PDUs. Another question is, sometimes changing duration or start date automatically marks percent complete as 100%. Is there a solution to this? So changing duration and start date. So I'd have to see exactly what you're doing, because it is going to depend on your task type. So if you're increasing your duration or bringing your duration in, it may mark a task as 100% complete. If you're seeing that and that's frustrating you, I'd also recommend that you insert the remaining work column field into your view. All right, so I always have remaining work. I know I'm throwing a bunch of stuff in here, but what I usually have is remaining work in any of my views when I'm editing my project plan, so I can see my work and then what's remaining. So if things are marked as complete, I can adjust this. I can say, wait a minute, we have 8 hours left of effort on this particular task. And then depending upon my task type, it's either recalculating my duration or the units. All right, so that could be a bit tricky to answer that question. It really depends on the task type and how you're editing your project. All right, but if things are being marked as 100% complete, you can always adjust your remaining work, increase it to whatever the remaining hours or effort that you believe for that particular task. Your work will recalculate as well. All right, so it'll take the remaining work plus whatever's been done, or what was originally planned, and add to that. All right. Okay, so these are good questions. We do have a few more minutes left. I don't see any new ones popping up here in the chat window. All right, so again, take the time to examine whether this is an organizational change for you. So every project will be a specific task type going forward, or if this is project by project, or even task by task. But just understanding that these options exist and why things are recalculating in your project when you're editing the project will be extremely helpful. So if you have a bunch of project managers back at your organization, feel free to share this information. You can request a recording at info@ppmworks.com, and we'd be happy to share that with you. Let's see if I can get up my, let's see, I should have one more slide at the very bottom. Love to hear from you. All right, so info@ppmworks.com. This is our website where you can register for additional webinars as needed. So please, don't be shy. Also, feel free to link in with me as well. I'm on LinkedIn, Laura Crawford with PPM Works. You'll see me as linked to PPM Works. So feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions about anything, don't hesitate. I know that you might be playing around with this a few days from now and might need our help. Just go ahead and email us. We'd be happy to answer your questions. And also, if there's anything that, if you're just exploring this just because you're thinking about using the tool, and go ahead and call us. We'd be happy